did that was very different, this is going to cause a lot of Jira admins to just freak out. But we used a single workflow across all 50 of those product teams.
Oh, wow. What are your thoughts on the current state of Atlassian products, pricing, companies that they may be acquiring? What are your thoughts on the direction they're heading?
Yeah, I guess I got a lot of thoughts. You see that a lot from community leaders. To be honest, I feel like they're trying to market too much to continue to get new users and trying to put shiny objects out there. No, most of the teams were like, help us get rid of these. When they realized what they were doing to themselves, they were kind of begging for help. How can we do this? Managers, yeah, they were a little freaked out because their feet are being held to the fire, right?
All right. Thanks, John, for being here. I've looked into some of your background, some of your work history. I know you've worked at Dave Ramsey Solutions, or I think that was the name of the company, but that was really cool. Did you do any kind of Jira administration there or Atlassian related work at the time?
Yeah, that's where I got my start with Atlassian and with Jira. So started to use it shortly after I got there. Back in 2014. And so probably the last 5-6 years or so, I was our full-time Jira administrator. So when I left to start my own company, we were at about a little over 1,100 employees, and I was the only full-time Jira admin for the company. Had some backups and things, but yeah, it's a great place to work. Really enjoyed it there. A lot of stuff, a lot of content. So there's a lot of different things we were doing with Jira between all the product teams and using Jira Service Management, doing facility management. So it opened up a lot of horizons.
How was the product managed in a company of, I guess, that size? And it's a fairly well-known organization, right? How was it running all of that on your own and being able to kind of manage that? Is there anything in particular that you learned along the way that you find really valuable that you apply to a lot of your projects today?
Yeah, there certainly was. So part of that was we had a consultant come in shortly after I arrived there. I came into the organization as a technical project manager, and I was working with our internal platform and web systems teams. And the consultant brought in Jira. We were using another tool at the time, and we were using Workfront at the time. And he also brought this concept of Kanban in. So we were doing Scrum there, but as he came in and began working on one particular project that was a little bit behind in working through with Jira and with Kanban, it really turned that project around. And kind of with his leadership, he eventually became the CTO at Ramsey. And he was my mentor through that process, especially with Kanban, and became an accredited Kanban trainer through that process. So I think it was really that concentration with Kanban, which led us to more of a consolidated environment. There were over 50 different product teams, all in heavy content related, right? So there's websites, there's school curriculum, there's small business help, there's the DaveRamsey.com website, RamseySolutions.com now with the rebranding there. But there were e-commerce going on. So on a particular product team, everybody sat together. So no matter where they were in the company, everybody came into the office and all the teams sat together. So you had copywriters and copy editors and designers and developers and QA folks, marketing, everybody sitting together. And then you had the VP over that particular product or that organization sitting close by as well. So what we did that was very different, and this is going to cause a lot of Jira admins to just freak out, but we used a single workflow across all 50 of those product teams.
Oh, wow.
And so it was literally about 70 different statuses. So and we were going through sort of pure Kanban, real Kanban, however you want to look at it. So we had different statuses for issues that were in progress versus ones that were sort of finished in that status, and so they were complete in that status, so that it would go into more of a status that was to-do status. So that helped with your time and status reporting, to be able to do that using some of the built-in Atlassian marketplace tools to do that. So it made it, a lot easier. But because of that, it kind of doubled the number of statuses that you would use. So there was a lot of conditions, a lot of validators along the way. There were some transitions that had 13, 14, 15 different conditions on it, all grouped and those kind of things. But what I learned about that is it made it really, really easy to maintain, and it became very solid. And rarely did we have to make a change to the workflow. And if we did, it was pretty, minor, and everybody benefited from it immediately. And so it made it easy as team members moved from one team to the next, or maybe one team would borrow a developer from one team to help out for a few months as they kicked up something big. They came in and just, the boards were pretty much all the same across. They were different projects. But again, using all the shared schemes across the way. So they knew exactly what to look for, what it looked like, made it easy for them to do their daily stand-ups and participate. So it's a long kind of answer there, but that was probably the biggest thing that I learned is keep your maintenance down. Use as many shared objects as you can through that process, and it just makes your maintenance life a whole lot easier.
So one workflow, I want to come back to that because that's
Sure.
a little crazy for 50 product teams. Why go with, I understand that it's easier to manage, but why go that route with so many teams?
Well, because basically what we figured out is everybody's following Kanban. It's pretty much the same process. You're just you're concentrating on getting things done before you bring new things into the workflow. And so when we first went through that across the company, we met with every single team, went through the static workshops, gathered all their pain points, gathered who are they interacting with as far as other people on other teams. And so because there was a lot of interdependencies like that, then that kind of drove us into that sort of one workflow, that one environment. It took a while to get there. It took a couple of years to really flesh all that out and get teams to be dedicated and on board with it. But our CTO did a great job of socializing that and really being the champion for it. So it started at the upper levels and kind of flowed down. The developers loved Jira, and so that made it easy for them to encourage other team members, because they kind of came onto it first before the full team kind of arrived with that. So just following the basics of Kanban, it kind of lent itself into an easy way to do that. When I first got there, we were doing 2 deployments a week. Deployments for all code happened on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so, it's kind of, they lined up on what we called the runway. And if there was a piece of code that had a problem, then everything got backed up on the runway, and sometimes deployments didn't happen that day. And so when we implemented Kanban and got everybody on board, we went from deploying twice a week to hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times a week, to be able to do that. And so stuff was going out the door much more rapidly. Teams were happy. It was easy to see the progress getting done. And so that's the other thing. When they see consistency across projects, I think it makes the team members happier as well, because they know what to expect, and it makes transitions to other teams a lot easier.
Is that something you still recommend and do today for companies, or is it pretty different?
No, I still recommend that. Not to maybe that large of an extent. It's just kind of what the appetite of the organization has for change and how they can do that. But anytime you're sort of bringing in multiple teams into a shared environment, there's always a lot of discussions to happen and to concentrate on. So you're handling change management just from a philosophy. At the same time, you're handling a new tool, potentially, or new ways of using tool that you may already have. So, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but it works.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach. I've never heard of one workflow for 50 product teams, so that's pretty crazy. I
Hmm.
do tend to want to consolidate tools or workflows or processes as much as possible to keep things simple. But it's very rare that you come across a team that has the exact same workflow or statuses that another team has that you could implement just one workflow. Maybe if they're development teams working on the same product, it makes sense. But yeah, it's pretty rare to come across that. What were the big challenges that you came across when implementing one workflow for 50 plus teams?
The biggest challenge was getting everybody on board and
Mm,
agreeing with it. When we went through those static workshops, it was interesting because with Kanban, you start with where you are, right? And it's sort of your
mhm,
first step. So we went through, had the interviews, we captured all of their steps and their process, and our initial board that we showed to them literally had over 20 columns to it, and people freaked out. They were like, "What is this? What is Jira doing to us? This is crazy. These boards are way too big." And then we were able to turn around and say, that's your current process. That's what you're doing. And they were shocked and they're like, we had no idea. And so when you start looking at it and you're looking at the statuses and the columns on their board, we began to figure out that it was like we were literally at about 70% approvals in the process. So, if
wow.
you look at QA, you look at peer reviews, you look at stakeholder review, those are all still approvals. You may call them different things, but it's another person looking at work that somebody else has done. And so there were multiple levels going from, maybe an assistant director to a director to a VP to, maybe even on up to the CEO. And so when they looked at that, it's like, okay, we have way too many approvals. This is taking too long. And so we immediately were able to help teams identify their process better and cut down on unneeded approvals in the process, and I'm able to get down to maybe 8 or 9 columns on a board. And the other thing is that it still made it flexible. As teams matured, you could actually even reduce that. For instance, on a development team, maybe you need to have it's in development, it goes to peer review, you're going to
Mhm.
emerge, then it's going to the test environment, then you're doing QA. A lot of that can be collapsed into a single column. And if your team is mature in the process. So Jira lends itself to that, makes it very easy to have the same exact workflow on 2 different teams, and one can be using, expanded to 5 columns with that workflow, say in the development area, and another team can be using a single column for the development. But it's still working. And you can use things with conditions. That's the power of Jira. I love
Mhm.
workflows. I love working with processes like that. So,
How did you
yeah, go ahead.
mhm. How did you handle the approvals afterwards? Because you said there was a lot of layers of those approvals. Did you end up consolidating that into one status with like a group of approvals, or was that just something that you completely took away from the workflow? How did you manage that once you narrowed it down to having less approvals in your workflow?
Yeah, a lot of it, the approvals just went away.
Mm,
It's one of those things. Do you really trust your people who are doing the work? And so we actually went through a process where our CTO said, if your team can produce work, and this is talking with the team wanted to get rid of all the approvals as well. It's like, okay, you as a team, if you can get things through your process where the people who are doing the approvals find nothing, say for a week or 2 weeks, whatever that might be, or if it's just 1 or 2 things, if they're not really finding much, then we can get rid of those approvals. So it's kind of a trust but verify. It moves into that kind of stage
mhm,
where you're doing the work, and so you'll just randomly do checks at the lower levels on the approvals. At some point, it's still going to all go through QA. QA is still going to look at everything. They're going to follow all the functional and technical requirements and make sure they're met. Um, but some of that with content, some of that's subjective, right? So you're looking for wording.
mhm.
If you were producing some kind of content and you had a writer and they were writing it in Dave Ramsey's style, you have to use Dave's voice in that and how you write it, and you have other people checking. Dave wouldn't say it that way. Dave would say it this way. So you have some of that going on. But as your people get seasoned and have been there a while and doing a lot of work, they know, and it makes it easier to produce that without so many different approvals. So. the long and short of that was we just got rid of a lot of those steps.
That's actually a great point and something I see very often as well. And I think what a lot of companies struggle with approvals, sometimes not just approvals, but just general statuses and things like QA checks or stakeholder approval or manager approval. And they run into this place where they have like a ton of approvals and maybe 5 to 10 per workflow, and it makes absolutely no sense. So I
Right.
think that's a really good testament to having that process in place where you go through, you check which approvals are maybe failed very often or maybe
Mhm.
never failed. And then if you never have an approval that fails, then there's really no point of having that status exist.
Exactly.
So what did that process look like for you when you met with those teams, or when you said you wanted to get rid of those approvals? Did some managers freak out when that happened? Like, what did that look like from your perspective?
No, most of the teams were like, "Help us get rid of these." When
Mhm.
they realized what they were doing to themselves, they were kind of begging for help. How can we do this? Managers, yeah, they were a little freaked out because their feet are being held to the fire, right? So if there's something that goes out the door and it's really wrong, it's literally in that case a national embarrassment, or there's a national eyes that are seeing it. So you got to be really, really careful. So there's some things like that that are a much bigger deal. They're going to get more eyes, and you should keep that in that process. So some of that is identifying the type of work that's being done, if it's content, if it's development, if it's just something on the website internally versus things that are forward facing to the customer. Some of that needs a little more scrutiny. Other things don't. So they were like, help us. How do we identify this? And so that was, again, sort of the answer was help them through that process to say, at this step, how many times in this step are you finding something? Is it once a week? Is it 10 times a week? Is it nothing at all? And then the next person, how much are they finding? And so if it's getting through this person and they're doing the checks and they're not finding things, is the next person finding? And so you start taking those levels out one at a time to shorten that process down so that you can, the main thing is you're wanting to get it out the door as quick as you can to the customer, because the customer can't benefit if they don't have the content and the code in their hands.
Right. Yeah. So what made you leave Ramsey Solutions then? If it was, sounds like a great job and a lot of transformations happening, then you started your own company. So I'm curious what your reasonings were for that.
Yeah, and again, loved working there. It's a lot of great people, excellent co-workers. Everyone worked as a team, so you didn't have the backbiting and people trying to jump over each other for a promotion. You didn't have that there, so everybody worked together to produce good content, good code, whatever it might be, whatever the product was. Working with excellence to be able to do that. So through the way, my wife and I always said that once we have two boys, and it's like once they are out and on their own and established, let's go travel and see the world. And to be able to do that, at Ramsey, you had to be in the office. There wasn't that work from home opportunity in that case. So started up, just an LLC, a consulting company, and began to work with some different consulting companies. Some of them ended up being partners, Atlassian partners. And so they would feed me work and different projects. So doing a little bit here and there, maybe with multiple different consulting partners feeding me things to be able to work. But within 6 months, that enabled us to make a move. So we made a move over to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and got to see a lot of the world over there. Been on trips to Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Oman. So, it's just being able to see that. We love history. We like to enjoy traveling. Dubai's literally got people from all over the world. I think there's over 200 nations represented in the city. So you're working with people from pretty much every continent. All the time, just people on the street that you encounter. So it's fantastic.
That's really cool. So you stayed in the Atlassian Jira space. What makes you so tied to, I guess, the Jira and Atlassian experience in general?
So I love the tools. I think the tools are excellent, and they come at a good or decent price to be able to do that. I love the flexibility and the power. that comes in the tools, so you can customize and take care of whatever you need to do. I saw the work product that got produced there at Ramsey with that many employees in so many different areas and product teams, and it just works. So as I got to know more about that, I got more involved in the Atlassian community, began to answer questions and things. And so the more that I did that, and eventually became an Atlassian community leader. And now I'm working again. I'm just communicating with people. It'll be 6 years now in May that I became a community leader. So that kind of drove that with the travel as well, because I was already that long ago communicating with people all around the world and helping out where I could, because the community was a major source of help for me when I first started using Jira, because Jira came into the company. I didn't come into a company with Jira, and so the company had to adjust. I had to adjust. We all had to learn a new tool, and so community was fantastic for that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about community as well, specifically because on a lot of the things that I look up, if I'm confused about something or if I need to figure out how to do something that's more complex than maybe a simple workflow or automation, I go to the Jira forums and I search for those questions, and oftentimes I see John Funk answers the question, and probably like 50% of the time it's you who's there. So I'm curious if that's like what you do all day. You just sit there, answer questions, or what's your process on going through and helping people out with, just general Jira stuff?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that. It's like, how do you do so much of this? You must be doing that all day long. And the truth is, I'm not. It's sort of developed as a process over the years. So when I first started needing help, and I went to the community and I would post a question and somebody would answer. And then I figured out that you could actually subscribe to the questions. And so as questions in the different areas in Jira or JSM or Jira product discovery or Confluence, whatever it might be, you can go into those different groups or those different products and subscribe, and then you'll get an email with all the questions. And so what I quickly realized is, like, I didn't know that I should even ask a question like that. I didn't know Jira could even do something like that. So I'm really learning the tool just by seeing the other questions that people were asking, and then seeing the answers to that. And so over the course of a couple of years, as I continued to do that, as I started seeing questions and I'm using the product more, it's like, oh, I can answer that. And so I would just jump in to help out and start answering those questions. So what I saw over the years is there was a lot of repeat. There's a lot of the same types of questions, literally sometimes the same questions. So I started a document. Actually, I have 2 different documents, and I just started, when I would write up an answer, I would paste it into this document, and I sort of keep it, segregated by topics, kind of thing. So when this question comes back up again, I can quickly go into that document, do a search, find that, and I'm literally just copying and pasting answers sometimes to begin with. So I can do that and quickly respond to several different questions in a matter of minutes. And, then there's follow up on some questions. Some of them it immediately answers the person's question, and they're able to immediately get help. And so that's my goal. Help as many people as fast as I can, and keep them moving just like it did for me. So it's a lot of, I learned that, I think, from Nick Burrows in the UK, who's he's the legendary guy, right? He's got more accepted answers than anybody else in the history of Jira in there. And he was telling me one time that's what he does. He has this sort of document or database, or however you want to refer to it. And so my goal is
So
in
how
the
long
morning.
is that document now? Is it like
It's
100 pages?
it's like 39, I
Oh,
think.
wow.
So in that one, there's one that I have more segregated, and then to the other one, to be honest, is just like quick tips for me, so that I use for my own benefit. So some of it is, how do I put in code that has a clickable URL for the summary or for the issue key. And so I just go copy that code and go paste it in. One of them is just the link to the Atlassian support, because a lot of times you try to help somebody and it's like, okay, that looks like a bug, or or that looks
Mhm.
like something's really not working right. And so you need to contact Atlassian support and see what they say. And sometimes bugs get introduced. Sometimes they find things that are just unique to their instance. But it's always neat for them to come back and post the solutions there. So it's something I couldn't help them with. And I, for whatever reason, maybe because it's a bug or maybe it's just something that I didn't know. And then in the
Mhm.
resolution, when they come back and post it, it's like, oh, I learned that. And it's like, oh, I'm going to snatch that. So I go and copy that and put it in, not exactly the same words. I can tweak it a little bit, but it's like I just learned something. So I'm going to add that to my document to have that to be able to quickly do it. So, and then I have a test instance, just my own personal instance. And so when people have things, I can go into that instance and see if I can duplicate their problem. And
Mhm.
if I can, then I can give them that feedback. If I can't, it's like, okay. A lot of times it's a browser issue. So, just like, hey, try another browser, clear your cache, try incognito mode. Is there anybody else in your organization having this same problem? Because you begin to recognize some of the patterns with some of the questions and some of the problems you see.
Right. Now, here's the real question. Is that document hosted in Confluence?
It is not. It is a Word
Oh,
document. So I should put that in Confluence.
probably.
I got started late, to be honest, with Confluence.
Mhm.
We did not use Confluence at Ramsey at the time. We had a on-prem version of it when I first started there, and I did use Confluence. But as things developed, we went more towards a consolidated Microsoft sort of solution there. So there's
Mhm.
more of an emphasis, like a lot of organizations that go towards SharePoint in doing that. So at the time, we moved away from Confluence, and so I was concentrating on Jira. So it's like, I'll just pop this in. And again, the goal was not for it to end up 39 pages. It was just have some quick stuff to be able to get to. And so that's why I just started out as a simple Word, but it could easily be put
Mhm.
into Confluence. It's a great idea,
Do you,
actually.
do you do you find that happens a lot where companies are moving away from multiple tools into like a suite of Google Workspace or Microsoft, or maybe the reverse where companies move away from those tools into like an Atlassian suite of products?
Yeah, I definitely see that. And that's usually my recommendation. It's like,
Mhm.
quit paying extra for the same groups of tools. And, you've got 5 licenses with this tool and 10 licenses with this one. And again, as one team member goes from one team to the next, now they have to learn a new tool. And so it just makes it a lot
Mhm.
easier if everybody's working off of that. I know that there's a lot of, especially IT managers and directors, they don't want to get into vendor lock, right? I heard that a lot. It's like, we don't want to get
Yep.
into vendor lock. It's like, yeah, understood. But at the same time, you want your people to be functional and collaborative and be productive as much as they can. And having to jump between different tools, they're not going to be. And you're expending a lot more money by having those multiple tools a lot of times.
Yeah, I have the same suggestions. I usually say, why use Word when you have Confluence, and then you could link that to Jira, and the relationships work really well together. Same thing with the rest of the Atlassian suite. They acquire a lot of companies, and most recently, like Loom was the biggest one. I've been using that for a while, so it's been great to see it integrated with Confluence as well, and that could replace a lot of your Zoom meetings and all that. But
Yep.
yeah, I try to push people and say like, hey, if you are already using these tools, you might as well use them in the Atlassian suite, especially if you're very Jira heavy and if you're already using Jira with your dev teams and your Confluence with your other teams. Maybe move over from Asana or other similar project management tools
Mm-hmm.
to Jira Work Management or just Jira now. So that's been my suggestion. And most of the teams that end up making the switch are pretty happy,
Yeah.
especially with like a project management tool. I feel like there's a lot of capability within Jira to do that, and moving away from those other tools where you're paying double in some cases because you have multiple licenses is a pretty good move for a lot of companies.
Yeah, definitely so. And kind of like even with my little document that develop into a number of pages, I think that you'll see a lot of times internally at companies, that becomes their knowledge base. So,
Hmm.
you're already capturing all that. If it's in Confluence, now all you got to do is connect your KB over to JSM, and you're immediately good to go, and you're going to help your agents out. You're going to help all of your team members out. Even looking at the internal intranet, used to be the intranet back in the day. A lot of companies I see now, the company I'm at now, everything is in Confluence from a sort of a company basis for all of our HR stuff, our documents and guidance, and every single team and division of the company has its own space, and you can go in and they maintain it. You can see all the team members that work in that, and it's fantastic to be able to do that. Much easier to edit and keep up to date than SharePoint. So you're if nothing else, you're saving on SharePoint administrator salaries by being able to do that too.
So this document that you have, is it super duper private? You're not sharing it with anyone, or if someone wanted access, would you be open to releasing it?
We'll see. I'd have to know them really well to be able to do that. So I've thought about, there's some kind of way maybe to monetize that eventually. It would need to be cleaned up a lot more. It's very, very haphazard right now. So I just have to search. But I've shared it with some people. Some companies that I've worked at, I've shared it with other people that I worked with.
So it's floating around
to do that. Yeah, sort of outside that organization yet. I haven't really done it.
The one use case that comes to my mind is training like an AI chatbot with this info, right? Especially if a lot of individuals have these questions. Maybe it's possible to do so with like the actual Jira form, which would give even more context, but that's kind of where my mind goes to. And if you feed it that relevant information and it could give you great answers, that would be a really cool implementation of some kind of a knowledge Jira bot or something.
Yeah, to be honest, it would be more accurate than I see a lot of answers to Jira for, say, ChatGPT or some of the other ones. Some of them are not very accurate at all still. If you're inside, say, with Atlassian Intelligence and you put something in, then yeah, it's much more accurate in what it's helping you to do, and it's continuing to get better. Rovo will continue to get better from the Atlassian side, but I still see a lot of not correct answers just from say ChatGPT, or people coming into the community and posting answers, and it's like, okay, that was obviously done with AI and not a good version of AI. So some of that becomes very, very obvious. But yeah, that's the whole point, sort of like with your virtual agents and JSM, that they would be able to look at previous answers and quickly pull that information and say, hey, here's a easy solution.
What are your thoughts on the current state of Atlassian products, pricing, companies that they may be acquiring? What are your thoughts on the direction they're heading?
Yeah, I guess I got a lot of thoughts. You see that a lot from community leaders. To be honest, I feel like they're trying to market too much to continue to get new users and trying to put shiny objects out there. So they want to be a competitor with ClickUp or Asana or some of those guys, and so those are the guys that are always hammering Atlassian. You're too old. You're a dinosaur. Your interface is not up to date. And it's like, yeah, but Jira kicks everybody else's butt when it comes to functionality and what it does, and a lot of times at even a cheaper price. So I wish they would concentrate more on fixing the known issues, the problems that are out there. There's a system within Atlassian called the Jack. And so within the Jack is where all these tickets go, where people submit stuff to support that needs fixed, bugs, those kind of things. So I wish they would concentrate more on just fix all the Jack tickets, fix all of the things that we know are known problems, and it's going to help out your current users. But that doesn't really bring them any more money. It's
right.
Typically what you see with Atlassian users, they're happy with the tool. They're not really going to go away. You have some that are not really that committed to begin with, and they'll wander away. But just piling on more and more users to get more and more revenue is, I don't know, it's not the way to go in my opinion. And so, you see concentration on new things like that. But I love the additions of the other tools along the way with the Loom and Automation rules. That used to be just another app out there owned by a third-party tool, and Atlassian acquired them. I used to work with those guys a lot, and it's one of those things that's happened that I would say at least 3 times. Where one of the companies will contact me and say, "Hey, this guy wants to talk a little bit about the tool. Would you mind talking with him?" And it's like, "Oh, I'll do that. I'm a champion for your tool. I like your tool a lot." And the next thing I know, I'm talking with someone, and ends up that person's a venture capitalist, and they're working with Atlassian or maybe an AppFire or somebody like that, and the next thing you know, that company's been acquired. And so, it's really cool to see that, to see a lot of success from those companies in the Atlassian marketplace.
Yeah, that's a good point. With that, I know a lot of people complain about this, especially from an admin side, that there's a lot of bugs that don't get addressed for a very long time in some cases.
Yes.
Some new features are great. For example, the automation delays, I think, are incredible.
Yes.
Now that we have them, I don't know how I've ever used automation without the delays. One super simple example is we're working on an onboarding process that's fully automated that creates Confluence pages with data pulled in from external sources already. And without the delays, there would be no way essentially to update the pages with the data from external sources. I would just so essentially we send the webhook out, and before the webhook comes back, there's no way to have the page seen unless there's a delay. And like half the automations that I have now, I feel like would just not be possible. So some things are really great, really amazing to have. Super happy to see them. And then in other times, I'm looking at a problem that I have in Jira, and then I reach out to support, or I look in the community, and there's been an open bug for like 10 plus years. And I'm like, man, how is this not fixed yet? Like it's been so long, and there's so much opportunity to fix these things. But you're right. I think it's a problem of it just doesn't bring new revenue, and it's not broken enough to the point where it has to be fixed. So it's just left open and probably never going to get resolved, unfortunately. But maybe eventually we'll see a pivot from Jira and hopefully fixing these bugs at some point. But yeah, unfortunately that day is not today.
No, it's not. But certainly, I'm not going to stay quiet about it. I'll keep promoting that whenever I can. Get the jack tickets fixed and keep doing. But part of my frustration with Atlassian is they'll roll some of these new things out, and a lot of them are just UI type things, because I think they feel this pressure they need to update their UI, and maybe they do, at least to a certain extent. But what happens is they start introducing stuff that nobody likes, and it's like, why did you do that? And so you're making a lot of people that currently use the product mad. And one of the things I keep pushing with them, if you roll out any new thing like that, you have got to have a way to turn that off. So when they first started doing that, it's like, oh, sorry, you're just stuck with it. And it's like, no, this is horrible. And sometimes it's been a complete code rollback to get rid of it, because the uprising was so much. And it's like you just save yourself a lot of trouble. And if you're going to do this and you insist on doing it, then at least put some kind of feature switch in there for the users to be able to turn it off. And then maybe they would get the idea when they see how many people actually turn the thing off, that you're going in the wrong direction. So let's, make this more functional.
Do you think people are more advert to change just because it's harder, if you already have that muscle memory of where everything is, versus maybe the UI is actually better, the functionality is improved, but because we're not used to it, it doesn't feel that way? Do you think that happens oftentimes?
100%. So I saw that even back with the old Jira view when I first started using it, and I was a strong opponent to the new view, which is what we're using now, And so now using it, and then now they're rolling out this other new view, and I'm a strong opponent against that. It's like, quit doing all these new views, because you get used to something, and you know where everything is, and you sort of become an expert, and then now everything has changed, and now you're no longer the expert on that anymore. And it makes you sometimes look foolish with your colleagues, where they say, help me with this, it's not doing this. Oh, it's easy. And you pull up the screen and you're sitting with them, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is totally different. I don't even know where to go. And so sometimes like that, things roll out, and it's a struggle to to get caught back up.
Yeah, that's the worst whenever I'm on with like a client or a prospect and I'm like, oh yeah, just go here, 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 and here. And then I share my screen and I'm like, oh, well, this button's gone now. Well, how do I figure
Exactly.
this out? So I'm sitting there and
Yep.
I should be the expert, but I don't know what to do in that scenario, which, yeah, sometimes those things change and they catch you off guard.
Yep.
Generally speaking, though, I do like the changes, like with the new UI. I'm actually, I pretty much am used to it now. I would say it's been a few
Mhm.
days, and I would say my muscle memory has kind of gone to the new UI. And overall, I like it. I like the combination of how Confluence and Jira look now. They look a lot more
Yep.
like one tool. I like the
Mhm.
combination of like JSM and Jira Work Management. Those all feel like one tool now. So it feels like a more unified experience from before, where it was like work management, software, JSM, then you have Confluence, and everything's kind of scattered, and you feel like you're using a bunch of different tools kind of mashed together.
Right.
Versus now, it's still different tools, and a lot of them are very similar functionality, but it does feel like a more cohesive experience.
Yeah, and that's
So,
been really good about it. So
mhm,
I pushed back on them when they started to roll that out. I was part of a beta or part of working
mhm,
with the designers when they were first doing it internally within Atlassian. And so my pushback was, okay, you keep putting, the menu options are on top, and then they went to the side, and then they went to the top, and now they're back on the side again. And it's like, you got to quit doing that to users. And their comment back to me was, we promise this is sort of like the last time, and we're getting everything consolidated. And it's going to be the same across all the tools. And it's like,
mhm,
okay, if you're doing that, I'm 100% on board with you. Let's do that. Give it a common look and feel. It made no sense that Jira Work Management had all of their menu options at the top and all of
mhm.
Jira was over on the side. Why did you guys do that? And maybe they had already that long sort of term vision that that's where they were going to end up.
Mhm.
We don't see that a lot of times when that's
Yeah.
happening. I actually met with the designers with Jira Service Management and how they have grouped the current different menu options in the admin part of the tool. I actually walked through that with them a lot, gave them a lot of feedback. So I was very thankful for the opportunity to be able to speak into that with product managers and designers. And
Mhm.
it's another good thing about being an Atlassian community leader. You have access
Right.
uh, to product managers and things of that nature sometimes directly with the Atlassian folks. They love to hear people who are using Jira in real life and out in the wild, and because that really helps them. Because a lot of times, they're not using Jira on an everyday basis to
Mhm.
manage development work, right? They're product managers and they're trying to make the tool better, and so they want to hear from people that are actively
Mhm.
using it out there. And so I jump at those chances every time to be able to
You
do
were
that.
part of the inspiration that helped group those Jira Service Management
Hmm.
settings?
Yeah,
Okay.
actually was. So,
Those are great. I actually really like the way they did that. I think the one complaint I have is automations should be a little bit higher
and
above the
that's
drop downs.
that
That's
was
the
what
only
I told
complaint I
them.
have.
Yeah, I told them it's like move automation to the very top,
Yeah.
and it still got stuck sort of down there in the middle, and it's
Hopefully they'll
still
fix
hard to
it.
find. But it's because I use automation more than anything else.
Yeah, me
I
too.
do. My day to day as a Jira admin, I'm sometimes using workflows and helping with that. I'm a lot of times rolling new projects out. So as teams are coming on board and moving over into Jira, and a lot of times that means a lot of automation that goes with it. So I spend more time in automation than any particular tool
Mhm.
within Jira on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I told them that. It's like move that up, and still didn't happen, but that's okay. So, ironically, I was able to do that with Jira Work Management when they were rebranding it from
Mhm.
Jira Core. It was Jira Cloud Core. And they started to walk through that. And that was a part of those initial design sessions, even before it went to beta. And as a result of that, it caught the attention of a publisher. And so they're like, we want you to write a book. Because it's like I knew um, the ins and outs of what changes were made and why they were made, because I was actually able to be a part of that group of people that helped to speak into that. So,
What is this book? Now I have to read it.
so it's Jira Work Management for Business Teams. So,
Okay.
unfortunately, it's out of date now. So,
What?
don't let that
Oh,
keep that
oh, with
from buying it. So, it was funny because we went to I was at Teams last year, and leading up to it, I was talking with the product teams at Jira Work Management, and it's like, hey, I want to shoot some videos. I want to do some just like, Jira made simple kind of things, and little short things, not, podcasts like this are great. And even more technical podcasts, but then you got to watch 30 minutes to get that one tool tip that you need and figure out. So my goal was, let's create a bunch of 3 or 4 minute videos on just one particular thing, how to add a new org admin to your company, how to downgrade to a free subscription. Just make those as separate videos. And the Jira Work Management product managers were like, hey, why don't you hold off on that just a little bit right now? Let's talk more when you're at Teams, and we'll give you some better ideas of things to use. And the whole reason where they knew that Jira Work Management was going away and being combined with Jira. And so I sat in on the keynote, and they made the announcement, and it's like, you just killed my book. So, so I went back to the product managers, and as soon as they saw me coming into the expo, and they're like, you see why we wanted you to wait? And it's like, yes, and thank you for that. So, it's been fun. It's been interesting. There's still copies that get bought. It's still helpful to see. So, it's rebranded from Jira Work Management to Jira Business Projects. But, there's a lot of the same, the concepts are still the same, but that's how that originated. So would have never have dreamed of writing a book beforehand, but
that's really cool. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I haven't read a Jira book yet, so that's on my list, and I'll have to check that one out.
There you go. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at Packet,
Perfect.
BACKT, or the publishers. So they do a lot of Jira books.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for jumping on, John. How can people find you if they're interested in following you? Maybe LinkedIn, company website, or something like that?
LinkedIn is the best place to go do that. And just search for my name. Funk is a pretty unique name. You'll find me out there. So either with Jira or Atlassian somehow. I work for a company now called Freeosk. So if you're in the U.S. and you're familiar with Sam's Club, and you go into a Sam's Club and you see these kiosks that provide free samples, and you can swipe your Sam's card, get a free sample. That's the company I work for, helping with being their first really full-time Jira admin. So they're calling it Jira Business Admin right now, because I'm helping with our client services and CX and ops teams to work more collaborative in rolling all these products out to a variety of different customers, not just Sam's Club. You see them in all the Sam's Club, but they're in Wakefern and a few others that hopefully will be rolling out. But I'm really enjoying being there. And so, yeah, look up Freeosk. You can look up my name out on LinkedIn. So. Yeah, and you find me in the community. The Atlassian community is probably the easiest way.
I'm a dedicated Costco member, so I don't go to Sam's Club, unfortunately. So I haven't seen those out in the wild, but maybe we'll get them at Costco eventually.
It's ironic. I'm now in Kalispell, Montana, is where I'm living. And when I moved back from Dubai, my oldest son lives here, and we have a Costco here, but not a Sam's Club. So, so I'm still looking for that too.
Do you at least get a free membership working there?
At Sam's Club, we do. Yeah.
Oh, so nice. That's cool.
That makes it handy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, John. It's been a pleasure having you on. And everyone, if you're interested in following John on community, LinkedIn, wherever else, feel free to reach out to him.
Yeah, be great. Thanks so much, Josh. Really enjoyed it.